Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. First, thanks for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. If you wouldn't mind, hit the like button before you leave. That helps out a great deal. I also love it when people comment. So if you have some ideas for videos or constructive criticism or just want to say hi, I love getting those comments. So I try to respond to all of them. Today I thought we'd do something kind of simple. I'm actually doing a show this weekend, so I'm pre-recording this, and so it's going to be kind of a simple project, but I think it's a pretty project. At least I hope it turns out pretty. It's going to be some real kind of curvaceous looking earrings with a couple of purplish lavender cubic zirconias at the bottoms, and they should have good movement and some good composition to them, I think. We'll see how they turn out. But before we get started, I wanted to thank my subscribers on YouTube. I passed 5,100 recently, which is amazing and awesome. Thank you all for all of your nice comments, subscribing, supporting me financially through the Buy Me a Coffee link or joining my Patreon. All those things really help out a lot. And the merch too. I've sold quite a bit of merch lately, so thank you for that. I also wanted to say thanks to my patrons over on Patreon, and they are paying for my premium content. Especially wanted to thank my newest patron, Rachel T, for signing up. I really appreciate your support, and I think you'll find that that's a nice group of people over there with lots of knowledge, and I hope you take advantage of all of that they have to offer, as well as what I can help you with. So thanks again. With that being said, let's get started on the video. Alright, well here's the CZs that I picked out. They're kind of a lavender color. They're 5 millimeters. Cubic zirconia is a man-made material that's very hard and has a high refractive index, so it's real sparkly, like diamonds, or even a little bit more than diamonds, I believe. Let's see what I drew up in my design idea book here. These are available on my merch store, incidentally, and I find anymore I draw up pretty much everything that I'm going to do, just because right there. The grid on it helps me to keep things in proportion, and that's always been a problem for me. And so it's like graph paper, but it doesn't have the lines interfering with the way you're looking at things. So I sketched up a few different designs, and I think I settled on this one, or something similar to this. So I'm going to use 14 gauge square wire. The ear wire will be 20 gauge half hard sterling silver. I buy half hard for ear wires because that way you don't have to rework harden them after you use them, especially if you haven't soldered anything to them. So I'm going to do a little contouring of the shape of the square wire so it gives it a little more, curly Q kind of look. But first I think we will make the bezels for those CZs. And to do that, this might be a good project if you've never made a bezel for a faceted stone, because they have a little pointy bottom on them if you look at them, and so you have to create a special kind of bezel. It's best if they're open back too, so you get more light play in them. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to make a little step bezel for each of these, and we'll put it right down there. So this will actually going to be there inside of that little wrap of the curly Q. I may put an extra jump ring in here so we get good movement, but I'm not sure. I haven't decided whether I'm just going to go right around those. I'm likely going to solder this point together so that it's contained, but I don't want these ear wires to have that much play in them, so I'll probably contain them up there somehow, either by putting something across there or something. We'll see. So let's get started on those bezels. You're making a bezel for a faceted stone. I find it's easiest if you set the stone on its table facet, or the top of it, so the pavilion's pointed upwards. If you've never worked with faceted stones before, the bottom part that's pointy is called the pavilion. The point above the midpoint is called the crown, and the midpoint itself is called the girdle of the stone. If they have a chopped off point on the bottom where it's flat, it's called a culet. They don't do that very often anymore. From what I understand, they did that because they thought it was a place that was prone to breakage, but I don't think that really is the case mostly. This is a 3/16 inch fine silver bezel strip, and it's 26 gauge, so it's a little on the thicker side. It makes for little stouter bezels, and the way I'm going to make these step bezels is I'm going to make a normal bezel for these, like where I'll make it fit, securely around there and solder it together. And then I'm going to make a couple of jump rings for each of them to elevate it so that that point has an open spot in the middle for it to sit in, and the girdle of the stone can sit right on top of those little rings, and we'll solder them in there. And then we'll file it down to the correct height so we can set the stone to just above the top of the girdle of the stone, which is that midpoint. So to start with, let's make the size here. Let's figure out the size. My words are failing me today. Usually when I cut these, I leave a little bit extra for filing purposes beyond where they meet. Just a tiny bit. About the thickness of that, or even a little bit less. We'll just straighten that out. You could use thinner bezel if you wanted to, and you could use shorter bezel if you wanted to. I use this tall stuff just because it's rarely not tall enough for a stone, and it's easy enough to file it down to a shorter size if I want to. I typically, when I'm making bezels, I make them into an angular shape to solder them. You don't have to do that, it's just the way I do it. If you haven't perused my playlists, that's a good way to use my channel. I am up to, I think last time I like 206 videos. I've been putting out 3 a week, typically on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday in the mornings generally. So check out the playlist. If you're a more experienced person, there's an advanced list where you can get some challenging projects. There's an intermediate list if you're kind of in the middle, and there's a beginner list. If you're new to this, and that might help you to narrow down some things to try and get some good ideas. They're also organized by category as well, like pendants or rings or bracelets, that kind of thing. So it makes it easy to find what you're looking for. So check out the playlists tab on my main page for that. If you haven't been to my channel before, I use pretty much always hard silver solder with just a few exceptions. The flux I use is My-T-Flux from Rio Grande. It's in a spray bottle. I like to spray on my flux. Again, there's many ways to do things, so you should find the one that works best for you and use that method. Oops. Okay. With faceted stones, you don't want to have a huge amount of play because they're going to be sitting on a little ledge on the inside. So if your bezel's too big, then your stone will fall right through. And then what would people say? They'd say, don't buy jewelry from Chad. His stones fall out the back. So now, to create those little platforms inside of those, I'm going to use some 18 gauge round wire. Cut myself a little bit of that. I usually, for most faceted stones, in order to elevate it high enough, I put 2 rings, one on top of the other. You can use whatever method you normally use to make these rings. Whether it's like a bail making pliers or round nose pliers or whatever, or a jump ring mandrel, or just wrapping it around something. I do that pretty frequently. Snip it down just a tiny bit. I'd rather cut it too big and gradually remove pieces so that I get a snug fit inside of there. If I cut it too short, I usually cut a new one so I don't have a little, crack on the bottom. Nobody wants an embarrassing crack on the bottom. That's pretty good. So we'll do another one of those and then 2 more for that one. So I'll put one on top of the other here and push this down over it. Theory. Just going to push and make sure it's all the way in there. And then from the top, I want to make sure that these rings are both sitting down flat. So they're trying to ride up at an angle. It's going to create a platform for your stone that won't work. It'll be constantly trying to tip over to one side. So make sure it's laying down flat there. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a little pile of these solder chips. But maybe 4 of them or something. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flux this, and then I'll set this right on top of those, and then we'll heat it. And we heat it just like we would in any other bezel from the outside, pretty much. It should just suck it right up in there. Just file it flat now on the bottom. Pretty soon you got a nice clean flat surface on the bottom and a little lip for your stone to sit on. So I'm going to go ahead and do the second one, and I'll be right back. Okay, I got a matching one now. So let's take a look at what we got going on here. I cut these pieces as 14 gauge square and straighten them out. And I'm going to file and end flat both of these. We use that as our starting point to get this curve. And something I did earlier was I need to figure out where I want these flattened out and thinned out a little bit, And so the places I really want that to happen are on the ends here, where it meets together here, and I want that to kind of thin out, and then up here I want it to thin out a little bit. So I basically took a piece of 18 gauge and I kind of marked off where I would like it to be a little bit flatter in one dimension. So, and these will all be in the same dimension, so now I should be able to just straighten this back out. Okay, so what I was thinking, so I lined up the two ends that are flat, and use that as our starting point. Really just transfer that to the wire here. And I can move it over from this one to this one, so I get it pretty symmetrical. Doesn't have to be perfect. I use my chasing hammer and try and keep it contained in those spots there, but we'll start with the ends. Okay, so I think now that we've thoroughly hardened those by pounding on them, let's soften them back up by annealing them. Let those cool down for a minute. So right here is the point where we got this point right here. So I'm going to kind of go right there and let's bend it around. These ends need to curl outwards like that. So I usually just grab them like this. You could use a round nose pliers if you want, but I don't see the advantage on doing stuff like this. Alright, let's see if we can't duplicate that. How did I get these? Oh, I know, pounding them stretched them out a little bit. That's why they're longer. Maybe just a little bit bigger. That's alright. We don't mind being a little bit different from our original plan. I kind of deliberately made the flattened end a little bit longer down here so I could cut them off shorter if I wanted to. I think I'm going to. think those will be kind of pretty like that. Let's see if I can duplicate that shape. Or at least close enough to where nobody would notice the difference. Kind of like that. Mostly I think at this point I need to solder this closed, and those to the outside of the bezel. And then I can start worrying about getting the shape perfect and adding ear wires and stuff. So let's do that. Let's get these soldered on. That looks reasonably close. Let's cut a little fresh solder, and then we'll solder it together. If you have noticed, I use pick soldering a lot. I'll put a link up here if you want to learn about pick soldering. It's a really useful skill. So. I think in order to keep the ear wires at the top, I'm going to solder just a little like half circle in there. Alright, solder those in there. Mostly mass in the earrings here, not so much in the little tiny ring there, so I'm not going to have to heat that very much to get it to solder. Should solder as long as it touches a little bit of solder on the side. Oopsie. Did you see that one? Let's fish that out of there and try that again. Whenever something goes a little wonky like that, it's usually best to set your torch down so you don't try to do it one-handed while you're lighting something on fire. There we go. So all I need to do now is add some ear wires and set the stones. So I'm going to heat them up and throw them in the pickle and leave them sit for a little while. Then we'll finish them up. Okay, I've got these polished and filed down to the right height. I went ahead and set that one. And then I figured I'd set this one in front of you. So we're just going to kind of push in opposite sides. go kind of 90 degrees from those. So you check and make sure that their stone is not tipping to one side or the other. It has a tendency to try and do that. And then you can kind of start squishing down the in-between places. To get it down as far as you can go, then you can do the burnishing stage, which is where you rub the top edge really hard. The only real hard thing about these ones is the earrings are kind of small to hold on to. Okay, well, once I get these, probably do a little final touch up with the Dremel. I think those are kind of pretty. So I'll do a little cleanup, I'll get some better pictures, we'll call it good. Finish the ear wires. Well, that was the kind of curvaceous looking pair of earrings with lavender CZs in it. I hope that you enjoyed it. I know I had fun making those, and if you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. That helps out a great deal. And I'd love to hear your comments and suggestions. And don't forget to check out the video description down below for the various links that are relevant to my channel, whether it's checking out the information about my Patreon or visiting my merch store, which has lots of cool stuff, or my website where you can see my jewelry. But either way, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you visiting, and take care. Happy silversmithing.